On April 22, 1995, inside an apartment complex that was located in Omani, California, 3 adults and 2 young children would be savagely executed at the hands of the Sangre street gang, who had been ordered to commit the murders by the Mexican Mafia, in particular, one of their leaders, Raymond Huero Shryock, whose target was a La M dropout by the name of Anthony Dido Moreno. Anthony Dido Moreno had dropped out from the gang years earlier and was in somewhat of a hiding stage, although him and Huero Shryock were neighbors in that same apartment complex. These murders showed the lengths that the Mexican Mafia was willing to go to eliminate those they deemed no good or betrayers of the gang.
Members have kept their existence a secret, but police say they're very real and their lifeblood is murder and drugs. Tonight on his exclusive report, Joe Rico takes us inside the Mexican Mafia. Joe?
Well, Paul, they have 300 to 400 members in prison, and you double that on the outside. They have a long, violent, bloody history, and the fact that people are starting to turn up dead suddenly could serve as a wake-up call that the Mexican Mafia, or La M, is no myth, but instead a cold-blooded reality. Born in prison to survive, they thrive on the streets of L.A. to kill. Now, we warn you, there are some graphic scenes you might find objectionable.
Everybody feared us. All the prison gangs, they control the inside, all the criminal activity. Anybody that shows weakness is executed without exception.
They are the gang of gangs. Vicious, calculating, fearless, deadly. To get in, you spill blood, and to leave, the blood could be yours. This is life in La M, or the Mexican Mafia. It began here at the Dual Vocational Institution in Northern California, about 70 miles east of San Francisco. Then it was a prison for some of the toughest and deadliest of young offenders in the state. 1957 it was. Luis Huero Flores, a gang member from Hawaiian Gardens, first introduced the idea of uniting all barrio gang members who were in prison. Their immediate plan: protection, intimidation, and control of other weaker inmates. One-time Emma hitman Ramon Mundo Mendoza was 21 years old when he joined the gang in prison. Years later, he defected and currently is in hiding.
The whole idea, the attraction to all the members that were inducted at that time were to simply improve their comfort zone while in prison. Clean sets of clothing, the best pair of shoes, what have you. Drugs, control of the drugs, control of the inmate prostitution.
As the EMA evolved and spread to other prisons, there arose other prison gangs to rival them. The Black Guerrilla Family, the Aryan Brotherhood, and EMA's bitter rival, the Nuestra Familia, another Latino gang rooted in Central and Northern California. Still outside of prison, La M was unknown, but anonymity soon ended with a chain of high-profile murders. 1976, this woman, Ellen Delia, threatened to disclose that La M had infiltrated a federally funded prison inmate program. In response, La M sends Alfie Sosa and this man, a former hitman, also in hiding, to greet her at Sacramento Airport. Did you have a surprise for her?
Right. What was that? Oh, we left out in the field.
And you guys killed her there?
Right.
Then there was the murders of 2 rival gang members in Bakersfield, the scandal over a Fresno judge allegedly in the pocket of La M. In Los Angeles, businessman Robert Mrazek is shot to death by a 17-year-old on orders from reputed Mexican Mafia godfather Joe Morgan. Morgan is convicted of murder and is serving a life sentence. Today, La M's influence is well-rooted in the streets of Los Angeles. There's the so-called no more drive-by edict. The Mexican Mafia orders the indiscriminate drive-bys to stop or else. Police gang experts say this edict is for real.
Most of the people would believe, well, gee, that's great. They don't want to. The Mexican Mafia is actually taking care of their people. They're making sure the drive-by doesn't happen. Not at all. Once they do this, they are getting a toehold in the communities, in the barrios. And once that happens, they're going to start pushing the Mexican Mafia criminal activity, which is extortion and drugs in the barrios. All the street violence and the drive-bys that they've put out their edict on to stop. I mean, that's something we couldn't do as law enforcement. But now they're able to do it, being locked up in prison.
Now investigators say at least 10 gang members have been murdered since that edict went out earlier this year. Now tomorrow night, he was among the deadliest of MA hitmen. Now they want him dead. Using a hidden camera, Channel 4 News follows him as armed guards lead him to safety.
Every face that I saw to me was a potential hitman or hit person.
Again, that's tomorrow night at 5 o'clock on Dial M for Murder. Paul.
Joe Rico, thank you very much. We thank you for making us your choice for news.
They are the gang of all gangs. They came together in prison. They came together to protect, intimidate, control, and kill. Cold-blooded executioners who become more powerful every day. Now, for the first time, hear from the most dangerous hitman of them all and go inside the Mexican Mafia. Today at 5, only on the Channel 4 News.
At an airport, a man risked death by coming back to testify.
The face that I saw to me was a potential hitman.
A Mexican Mafia hitman changes his allegiance. An exclusive interview at 5 tonight. And Princess Diana shuts up the critics.
Live in Southern California, this is Channel 4 News at 5:30.
The Mexican Mafia. From a prisoner to a gang hitman, a marked man tells all.
Recruited in 1971 at San Quentin. I was an aspiring Mexican Mafia member.
A Channel 4 News exclusive coming up.
Spread. Coming up inside California's most dangerous, most violent gang, you will see it all through the eyes of a gang hitman who kept a scrapbook of his hits. That's next.
Also at 6, we will show you
The Mexican Mafia, they are tough guys. They are bent on crime. Police say their lifeblood is murder and drugs. Tonight, we introduce you to a man who was one of the brothers. He was one of them. A hitman who murdered for the Mexican Mafia, but now he is testifying against them. Tonight, Joe Rico has this special report. Joe?
Well, Paul, for years, Ramon Mundo Mendoza was among the deadliest and loyal of Mexican Mafia soldiers. He was brilliant yet vicious, traits that got him on the inside. Then one day he had enough and became a born-again Christian and turned against La M. And very quickly, he went from #1 hitman to #1 on the MS hit list. Last week he came out of hiding, a new life, a new look. He allowed Channel 4 News to follow him using a hidden camera as he traveled to San Francisco to testify once again against the Latino mob, who many believe were ready to kill him when he came to town.
I got a guy in the car downstairs now. He's watching our car. How about the report? Yeah.
Former Mexican Mafia hitman Ramon Mundo Mendoza was secretly rushed through San Francisco International Airport last week under heavy security, brought out of hiding to testify against his former brothers in La M. For years they've tried to find and kill him. They've come close, twice. He prayed there wouldn't be a third.
Every face that I saw to me was a potential hitman or hit person, and I found myself scrutinizing everybody. Why don't you get the mail here? Oh, we're going to go downstairs. Why don't you just stay behind us? I'll kind of block it so they won't be able to see you. You have to look at it. Okay.
Mendoza was a one-time member of La M's inner circle, a man the Mexican Mafia Godfather once considered like a son. But Mendoza wanted out, and the only way out was death. He instead chose survival and ran and hid, and is now writing a book on the Mexican Mafia called From Altar Boy to Hitman.
I was recruited in 1971 at San Quentin. I was an aspiring Mexican Mafia member. I wanted to be part of their madness.
When he called it quits and defected, Mendoza had killed at least 20 people for La M. Some say a lot more, but it was all strictly business. He even kept a scrapbook. His last job as an MS soldier was in Signal Hill, November 1977. Helen Mrazek, a bail bondswoman who did business with the Mexican Mafia, wanted her husband, Robert, killed. She offered reputed Mexican Mafia godfather Joe Morgan $10,000 and a kilo of heroin as partial payment.
Joe contacted me and had me coordinate the execution and suggested that I use a game youngster.
That game youngster was 17-year-old gang member Artie Guzman from East Los Angeles. He was an up-and-comer who was eager to please La M.
He was also made a member of the Mexican Mafia when he went on to do his sentence in Folsom Prison.
Mendoza was also arrested, but having his fill with the MM, he turned and testified against Morgan. The Godfather got a life sentence, Mendoza a new identity, and with the help of witness protection, he left California. Now, 13 years later, he was back in the spotlight. Government attorneys knew bringing him back was a deadly risk.
There's always a danger that information will get out accidentally, and we would be concerned about people learning of his whereabouts and coming to try to find him.
If we don't run into an adversary or into a bullet, that doesn't mean they didn't have somebody waiting somewhere. It's just that they don't know which way we're coming from.
His testimony went without a hitch, though it is believed M.A. had spotters in court. But Mendoza says it doesn't matter anymore. He's through with any involvement with his past. This was his last call.
You disappear again.
Yeah. I go back home, and I just resume my life anonymously, It's been 22 years since I joined the Mexican Mafia in San Quentin, and it seems like an eternity. I'm happy where I'm at, and I don't want to ever again return to my previous lifestyle.
And if you're heading southbound on Highway 880, the Nimitz Freeway through Alton.
Now the double life has been difficult. No family ties, having to make up stories about the past, can't even take off his shirt without revealing tattoos, then having to explain. He has a 9-to-5 job, and he says he misses his Los Angeles Dodgers. And yes, he says he has tremendous remorse for what he has done. Tomorrow night, we conclude with the man who calls the shots, the Mexican Mafia Godfather, Joe Morgan. His deadly likeness is portrayed in the controversial movie American Me. People died behind the making of that film, and many say the real Godfather called the fatal shots. That's tomorrow night right here on Channel 4 at 5 o'clock. Back to you.
All right, Joe, very interesting story. Coming up next here, the troubled times for superstar Michael Jackson, his latest family tragedy.
Coming next with a weekend AccuWeather forecast.
And when our news continues here at 5:30, dangerous stunts on movie sets. We'll show you how Hollywood is cleaning up its act after yet another accident.
And a former hitman for the Mexican Mafia talks about the violence surrounding a hit movie.
Maybe too much.
Our special report, Inside the Mexican Mafia.
And the Mexican Mafia, the gang at the top. Members of other LA gangs dream about being members someday. Their lifeblood is murder and drugs. Tonight in his special report, Joe Rico takes us inside. We'll look at the man at the top, the Godfather. Joe?
Well, Colleen, since it was formed behind California prison walls in the late 1950s, the Mexican Mafia, or La M, has about 800 members and associates today, both in and out of prison. It has been a violent, bloody history, and tonight we take a look at the man they call the Godfather, the man calling the shots, 63-year-old Joe Morgan, currently serving a life sentence for murder.
Joe Morgan is an enigma. Half of him is one of the cruelest, coldest son of a bitches you'll ever know. The other half of him is one of the funniest, compassionate, well-liked people.
Joe Morgan is the most influential member of the Mexican Mafia today, the Godfather. Yet the man whom authorities believe has been involved in more than 100 murders is not Mexican. He's white, a Slavic who grew up in San Pedro and East LA and absorbed the culture, the language, and the violent underbelly of their mean streets, the gangs.
As far as Mexican Mafia members are concerned, Joe's Mexican because his heart isn't Mexican. So we don't look at him by the color of his skin. Well, he was born and raised in the barrios, in the neighborhoods. So by hanging around with the guys from the neighborhood, he thought like them, he spoke like them, he speaks extremely fluent Spanish. And as far as he's concerned, he's Chicano. And if you told him otherwise to his face, especially if you told it to him in a negative way, he'd kill you.
Morgan did killed early in life. 1946, as a 16-year-old, he bludgeoned the husband of his 32-year-old lover, Elvira Duran Rojo, and dumped the body in a rural canyon. It was a sensational case that gave the local press its fill of tabloid headlines. It also introduced Joe Morgan to a place he'd call home for most of his adult life, state prison, where he was sent at the age of 16. And it was here that Morgan helped mold a newer, deadlier wave of Mexican Mafia soldier, a group now requiring the death oath and a pledge of silence. In little time, La M had become the most feared of all prison gangs. It was an army that pushed its members to be the worst that they could be. But Morgan was also shrewd and had big plans. Drugs. He had access to the largest heroin and cocaine supplier in Mexico. He also had ties with the Cosa Nostra. But in the 1970s, he out-finessed the Italian mob and gained control of the L.A. heroin market. Former M member Ramon Mundo Mendoza was Morgan's right-hand man who helped engineer the Mexican Mafia's rise beyond the prison walls, a plan that was chronicled in the 1992 film American Me, starring Edward James Olmos.
Choices we made to survive got Mundo, JD, and me 10 to 25.
I was played by the role of Pepe Serna. I was the character was Mundo, which was my nickname when I was a Mexican Mafia member. Okay. William Forsythe played the role of Joe Morgan, who in the movie was JD. And Cheyenne Cadena was played by Edward James Olmos, which in the movie was a character called Santana.
But sources say the film offended many members of the Mexican Mafia, especially Joe Morgan. It was believed that even behind the maximum security walls of Pelican Bay Prison near the Oregon border, Morgan gave the go-ahead to have 3 technical advisors to the film killed. Whatever plans the Mexican Mafia has for the future, it will be without the Godfather. Channel 4 News has learned that Joe Morgan is terminally ill. He is currently here at Corcoran Prison, south of Fresno, undergoing tests for a growth in his liver. Doctors give him 12 weeks to live. Ever since he began serving his life sentence for murder, Joe Morgan has maintained his silence, even refusing to acknowledge whether or not the Mexican Mafia even exists. Said one former member of the Mexican Mafia inner circle, Joe Morgan isn't the type for dramatic deathbed confessions or conversions. In his own warped sense of value, he's been a good soldier till the end.
He's a hope-to-die soldier, and he chose to continue that road, and it looks like he's taken it to his grave.
Morgan is now seeking mercy, asking for a compassionate release to be with his family. Prison officials say, considering his clout, even in ill health, that release appears very unlikely. Paul, Colleen.
All right, Joe Rico, thank you.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Greenlit Gang TV. Hope y'all having a blessed weekend. If you can't tell, I'm excited to bring this one to you guys today. Really quick, before we jump into this, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It goes a long way for the channel. Newest goal, 30,000 subscribers. I said it, I think, yesterday for the first time. Got to speak it into existence. So that's what we're going to be going for. 30K. Taking some water down really quick. Don't know why my voice has not come back for like a month. My girl thinks it's because I'm still sick. I don't think I'm still sick. I think it's just because between my job, making these videos, I talk quite a bit. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about a very infamous Mexican Mafia hit, execution-style murder that reminded me a lot of the Goshen massacre that happened in Goshen, California a few years back. That was very brutal. I'm not even going to go into that. I did a video on it long time ago. Got a lot of feedback, got a lot of views. It's probably at the time my most successful video. Go check it out, or just YouTube Goshen Massacre. I think you'll find yourself intrigued with that, to say the least, but it's a very sad story. And this one that we're going to be talking about reminded me of that. We're going to be talking about the murders, but the target of this was, like we said in the intro, at one time, Mexican Mafia member who became a dropout, a guy by the name of Anthony Dido Moreno from the San Gabriel, California area. He was made in like 1972 in San Quentin, and about 11 years later, in 1983, he dropped out. He'd had enough. He was done. And from there, kind of went into a semi-hiding, and just some unfortunate events, some really crazy bad luck of where he ended up living and who he ended up living next to, basically kicked off and led to this insane execution-style murder of 3 adults and 2, like a baby basically was killed in this. A child, a 6-month-old baby and a 5-year-old child ended up being collateral damage for the Mexican Mafia. These are the kind of stories that even as someone like me who, you know, I read these basically daily, and you kind of become desensitized to a lot of this information. This guy got killed, this guy in prison. And don't get me wrong, murder's bad all the way across the board. I don't like seeing it. But when you're talking about children and kids being killed, I mean, a 6-month-old baby, the stakes get raised. The outrage, the anger, the high profileness of these cases, it goes through the roof. And this took place in Omani, California. So, first, give a shout out to a page that I follow quite a bit, Prison Chronicles. I'm going to read from his post about this particular case. Gives a good overview, but then we're going to dive into it. I got court appeals, Supreme Court rulings. I got a page that is pro-death penalty because some of these guys involved in the murder got sentenced to death. That give an even more of a breakdown. We're going to jump into that appeal paperwork. They give some really good details, the 2 guns that were involved. I got the calibers of those. I got the toxicology reports of some of the victims. We're going to get into all of it, man. But first, let's start with this post, Prison Chronicles. Go check it out, YouTube, social media. This one, I think, was a Facebook post. Just really good, really good. Okay. Anthony Dido Moreno from San Gabriel Valley, California, was a member of the Mexican Mafia prison gang who was murdered, along with 4 other people, in a high-profile 1995 execution-style shooting in Omani, California. The murders were ordered because Moreno had left the gang, a violation of the gang's blood-in, blood-out rule. On April 22nd, 1995, 3 adults, Anthony Moreno, 42, his sister, Maria Moreno, 38, family friend, Gustavo Tito Aguirre, 36, were shot to death in an apartment. two of Maria Moreno's children, 5-year-old Laura Moreno and 6-month-old Ambrose Padilla, were also killed. That's crazy, man. 2 other young children survived the attack. The attack was ordered by the Mexican Mafia and their member, a very infamous member who I covered just a few days ago, man. I couldn't believe he was involved in this. Raymond Huero Shryock. Basically, they caught him on surveillance video. They caught him on surveillance tapes. And he was free at the time of this murder. See, the thing is that you run across quite often with a lot of these Mexican Mafia guys when you cover these stories. A lot of them are locked up when they're given these orders, right? So it's interesting that Raymond Huero Shryock, who I think, I know he is, 'cause I just talked about it. He's in ADX right now. He's in Florence, Colorado, the big, Supermax where El Chapo's at. But at the time, he was out on the streets, man. And you kind of see when you read these stories why a guy like Raymond Shryock ended up in ADX when you read something like this. Because Raymond Huero Shryock orders this because Anthony Moreno had dropped out of the gang in 1983. The killings were carried out by members of the Sangre street gang who were seeking to gain favor within the Mexican Mafia. Richard Primo Valdez and Jimmy Character Palma were the main shooters convicted and sentenced to death for the murders. Palma, who was from Arcadia, California, he would actually later be killed in prison, stabbed to death. Luis Pelon Maciel, he was a made Mexican Mafia member. He was basically the one that brought it all together for Huero Shryock, all right, for conspiracy. He was not at the shooting. He did not pull a trigger. He wasn't even on the scene, but he put it all together. He was also sentenced to die. Sentenced or was convicted on theories of conspiracy in aiding and abetting the commission of the murders. He reportedly was attending his son's, get this, man, was attending his son's baptism at the time that 3 adults and 2 young children were killed. He was found to be responsible, just as responsible as the shooters for facilitating the crime. He also received the death penalty. There were 2 other guys involved as well, just Sangre street gang members who were brought along. And you got to remember, man, these guys, these are Southsider gangs, these are Sureño gangs. These guys are trying to make a name for themselves. Yes, I will pull the trigger. Yes, let's go kill this dropout. Do I think at the time they knew there's going to be little children in the house? Not sure. Sure, they knew there were some women in the house, and they knew it could be a possibility. You're not leaving any witnesses. You're going to do whatever you got to do. That's for me and a lot of us, and those of you that are listening, something that you couldn't mentally fathom. But for these gang members, for these Mexican Mafia members, kind of just part of doing business. Those 2 guys' names were Danny Tricky Logan and Anthony Scar Torres. And they each got like 129 years, I believe. This is an article. Basically, it was like a pro-death penalty article. It literally says when you click on it, this case is why we need the death penalty, right? And I agree. Yes, I am. A lot of times I don't give, try not to give my opinion one way or the other. Try not to puff myself up in any way, shape, or form. I just tell the story, let it be. But yes, I agree with this where it's like, these are the cases where I believe you did something so horrible on earth, you no longer deserve to have life. Just as simple as that. You need to be put down, honestly, like a dog because of what you did. And the title, Valdez Murders Show Why Death Penalty is Needed. And the decision announced, this is in 2012, and basically these guys appealed their death sentence. So in 2012, they appealed, and they got upheld. In the decision announced Thursday, the California Supreme Court affirmed the conviction and death sentence of Richard Valdez for the 1995 murders of 4 members of an Omani family and a 5th person in the house. Evidence presented at trial, and the reason I'm reading this, guys, because this goes even more in depth. At trial indicated that Valdez, a member of a street gang, killed Anthony Moreno because Moreno had quit the Mexican Mafia, an offense that under the gang's rules is punishable by death. At the time of the murders, Moreno was living with his sister, Maria, and her children. A guest at the residence at the time, Gustavo Aguirre, was also marked for death by the gang. Along with Moreno, 4 others in the apartment were shot to death in the early afternoon, including 5-year-old Laura Moreno and 6-month-old Ambrose Padilla. One child escaped to a neighbor's house, covered in blood. Evidence introduced at trial, including the testimony of 16 witnesses. A 3 or 4-year-old girl survived by hiding in the house. Quote, the cold-blooded murders of 5 people, including 2 children, in order to enforce the rules of a criminal gang demonstrates why California should not vote to abolish the death penalty this November, but should instead demand that the state start enforcing it, said Criminal Justice Legal Foundation President Michael Rushford. Quote, does anyone really believe that life in prison is the appropriate sentence for this butcher? Rushford asked. Leave a comment down below. What do you guys think about the death penalty? That's the question of the day. What do you guys think about the death penalty? Then talked about how executions in California had been delayed. The facts of the conviction cited by today's Supreme Court decision in People v. Valdez are as follows. In the early afternoon of April 22nd, 1995, Valdez, accompanied by fellow gang members Luis Pelon Maciel, Jimmy Character Palma, approached the apartment of former Mexican Mafia member Anthony Dido Moreno's sister, Maria. After Maria's 6 or 7-year-old son ran to a neighbor's house screaming and covered in blood, picture that for a second. The neighbor called the police. Officers found Anthony Moreno, 42, lying in a pool of his own blood just outside the door of the apartment, killed by a single gunshot wound to the head. The gun had been pressed to his head just near his right ear, then exited out the left side of his skull. Gustavo Tito Aguirre, 36, tried to hide when Valdez shot Moreno. He was found lying between a bed and wall, killed by a single gunshot to the top of the head. He had also sustained a non-fatal gunshot wound through his left shoulder. Maria Moreno, 38, was found inside the apartment in a pool of her own blood. She was killed by a single gunshot fired from a few inches, which became lodged in her brain. She had also sustained a non-fatal gunshot wound to the right buttock. Beside Maria, I don't like reading this, laying face down in a pool of blood was her 5-year-old daughter, Laura Moreno, who only weighed 47 pounds. Laura was killed by a single gunshot that entered her back, punctured her lung, and exited through her chest. She was believed to be either seated, lying down, or slightly hunched over when her life was taken. Oh, God. The youngest victim, 17-pound, 6-month-old Ambrose Padilla, was found lying beside his mother and sister in a pool of blood. He was murdered by a single gunshot wound through his right eye, which traveled through his mouth, the base of his brain, to his spinal cord, and finally out the back of his neck. There was a hole in the pillow underneath him, making it likely he was lying on his back when shot, because he's a baby. That's what babies do. They lie on their backs. That's crazy. Like I said, we read from an appeal. Basically, they said that the guns that were used, that talked about the Supreme Court appeal, they found shell casings, reading from the appeal, from a 45 caliber and a 38 caliber handgun. Jump over here really quick. Prosecution case, circumstances surrounding the murders. On April 22nd, 1995, between 10 and 10:30 p.m., basically I already gave the names. The apartment was located at 3843 Maxon Road in Omani, California. And these guys were all Sangre Street gang members, except Luis Maciel, who was a made Mexican Mafia member. And this is where we're going to talk about Raymond, Huero, Shryock a little bit more. The prosecution's theory was that the killings were ordered by Mexican Mafia member Raymond Shryock, who had recently sponsored Luis Maciel, who was also known as Pelon, to become a member of the Mexican Mafia. So this was going to be his apprentice. The prosecutor theorized that Luis Maciel had conspired to commit or aided and abetted the commission of the murders, but was not present when the shootings occurred. The prosecutor also theorized that Anthony Dido Moreno was killed because he had dropped out of the Mexican Mafia, that Gustavo Tito Aguirre was killed either because he had robbed drug dealers protected by the Mexican Mafia, or because he happened to be in the house at the time of the killings and the gang members had been instructed to leave no witnesses, and that Maria and the children were killed because they were witnesses, even though there is a general rule in the Mexican Mafia not to kill women or children. Gonna call a little bullshit on that, because if that was the case, don't feel like that would have happened, and I've read plenty of stories of Mexican Mafia members killing women. Not a lot about children, but still. Luis Maciel asserted an alibi defense, maintaining that he had been at his son's baptism and baptismal party during the murders and the events preceding them. Now, we're going to get into why and kind of how this happened. This is listed in that appeal as events before the day of the murder. This says witness number 15, and basically this is our guy Anthony Dido Moreno's brother, who, like many other witnesses, was not identified in the public written record for his protection, testified he was victim Anthony Dido Moreno's brother. Anthony and Raymond, pay attention guys, Anthony and Raymond Shryock had served time in San Quentin State Prison. And in 1972, both men became made members of the Mexican Mafia, so got made at the same time. Anthony would drop out in 1983. In January, this is crazy. Think about how choices you make, things you do in life, how things come full circle. And man, they came full circle for Dido. In January 1995, 12 years after he drops out, Anthony lived 2 apartments down from Raymond Huero Shryock And in February or March, he moved down the street to the house where the murders occurred. His brother had expressed concern to Anthony Dido Moreno, saying, quote, something might happen to him or the family because Anthony had dropped out of the Mexican Mafia. Anthony ignored his brother's warnings, quote, because he was so involved with drugs, and told his brother that Shryock, quote, was not a threat to him because he knew him for so many years. An autopsy photograph showed a tattoo on Anthony's right finger that read MA, which refers to the Mexican Mafia. In an 18-month investigation culminating in April 1995, Los Angeles County Sheriff Sergeant Richard Briones Valdemar and other law enforcement officers secretly videotaped 18 Mexican Mafia meetings. On January 4th, 1995, Raymond Shryock, who Sergeant Valdemar believed was a member of the Mexican Mafia and had primary control over the San Gabriel Valley area in which Omani is located, stated at a Mexican Mafia meeting, quote, I don't know if you ever heard of this brother named like Dido, Shryock explained. Quote, he dropped out a long time ago. And when Shryock was living in a monthly apartment, quote, the motherfucker was living right downstairs in an apartment and, quote, never came up. Basically saying, yeah, he's hiding from me. After Shryock moved, Dido, quote, started showing his face. This is what Shryock's saying. Yeah, after I move, this pussy basically starts showing his face. So somebody's seen him and told me about it. But there's all kind of people in the pad. There's a whole bunch of youngsters and kids and all kinds of shit. So I'm trying to figure out how to, well, I need a silencer is what I need. Shryock also said, I just want to kill him, not the little kids. Luis Maciel, who was not present at the meeting, on April 2nd, 1995, Maciel walked into a Mexican Mafia meeting that Sergeant Valdemar was monitoring electronically. At the meeting, Raymond Shryock put defendant up for membership, and that's Maciel, and raised his hand as a sponsor, saying, quote, this dude has gone way above and beyond the Call of Duty, man. This motherfucker is sharp. He's taking care of a lot of business. He also said, quote, I know the vatos, the guys that don't know him, but take my word for it, the motherfucker's down. I'm not talking about just violence either, okay? You know, he takes care of business real good, and he's downed a whole lot of motherfuckers in the last year, and he went against his whole neighborhood for us. He's been fighting with them and downed them, and when one of his homies killed that 1-year-old baby a few months ago, he's the one that took care of them. Luis Maciel was voted into the Mexican Mafia. That's insane, man. Moreno would talk about Gustavo Tito Aguirre was a family friend about a month to 6 weeks before the murders. The brother of Dido saw Aguirre rob a local drug connection or dealer of drugs worth about $50 and $35 in cash. So $50 worth of dope and $35 in cash. He'd also heard that Aguirre committed other robberies in the area involving small amounts of drugs worth $50 to $100. And these are basically drugs that the Mexican Mafia are allowing this dealer to sell. So that's going to affect their bottom line. Said the drug dealers Aguirre robbed were paying taxes to the Mexican Mafia. So you got a dropout and one of his buddies who's staying with him at the apartment. They're kind of, you know, Dido's hiding out. Aguirre's robbing people, which basically that means he's robbing the Mexican Mafia. And before the murders, Raymond Shryock told the brother, he told this witness that he was tired of Tito disrespecting him and robbing dope connections, and that sooner or later he was going to have to pay for that. Another witness who was an Omani Flores gang member testified that a couple of days before the murders, defendant spoke to him about victim Aguirre, and that defendant is Luis Maciel. Quote, stay away from Tito because he was no good. Luis Maciel also told him that at some point Tito was, quote, burning connections, and Shryock wanted him taken out. Luis Maciel was sentenced to death in 1998. Jimmy Palma sentenced to die, but was stabbed to death in prison a short while later. Richard A. Valdez sentenced to death. Danny Logan and Anthony Torres were each given 129 years. This is an absolutely crazy story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave your comments down below about the death penalty. And until next time, you already know what it is. Peace.